The chronometer above my bunk read 642 hours since translation. The one in the corridor outside showed 19. Chief Bosun Fenton's personal timepiece, which she wore on a chain around her neck like a relic, had stopped displaying numbers entirely, and now showed only a symbol I did not recognize, a spiral that seemed to turn if you watched it long enough, though its hands never moved. We had missed the exit point. Navigator Adelaide Marsh had announced this 43 hours after translation began, or perhaps 400 hours, or perhaps before we had even entered the Immaterium at all. The sequence of events no longer arranged itself properly in my memory. I remembered her voice over the Vox system, calm and clinical despite the words she spoke. Translation error confirmed. Estimated delay to real space emergence unknown. All hands maintain stations. The Emperor protects. Then static. Then her voice again saying the same thing but older somehow. Then younger. Then nothing for what felt like weeks. I am Warren Talbot. I was Warren Talbot. I will be Warren Talbot. The tenses have stopped cooperating. I was 31 standard years when we entered the warp aboard the troop transport Fervent Obligation, carrying 14,000 Imperial Guard soldiers to reinforce some distant war zone whose name I have since forgotten. Bosun's mate 3rd class, 17 years of service, acceptable performance reviews, no significant disciplinary actions, 2 commendations for damage control during void combat, a life measured in watches stood and duties performed, in the precise rhythms of naval service that gave shape to existence. All of that precision has become a joke the universe tells itself now, and I am the punchline. Rating Ellis brought me my ration pack this morning, or yesterday, or in 3 days. He knocked on my hatch the way he always does. 3 sharp raps, pause, 2 more, and when I opened it he stood there looking exactly as he had when we departed Port Severance. 24 years old, thin face, ears that stuck out slightly, a scar across his chin from a cargo accident in his first year of service. I looked at my own hands as I took the ration pack from him and saw the veins standing prominent under papery skin, the knuckles swollen, liver spots spreading across my wrists like a map of territories I had never agreed to conquer. "You look tired, bosun's mate," Ellis said. His voice had not changed either. I wanted to ask him how. I wanted to grab his shoulders and shake him until answers fell out. Instead, I heard myself say, "Carry on, rating." He nodded and walked away down the corridor, passing 2 soldiers from the guard regiment whose transport hold had been closest to the Geller Field's fluctuation point. They had been young men when we translated. Now they shuffled past on legs that could barely hold them, white-haired and trembling, their skin hanging loose on frames that had somehow aged 60 years in what my personal sense of time insisted was merely weeks. One of them looked at Ellis with rheumy eyes full of something I could not identify. Hatred, perhaps, or simple confusion, or the particular despair of a man watching someone else escape a fate that had devoured him utterly. The Geller Field had held. That was the strange part, the part that did not fit any of the training modules or horror stories we passed among ourselves during long translation periods. The field had held, maintaining the bubble of reality around our ship, keeping the daemons and the raw stuff of the Immaterium at bay. No breaches, no possessions, no screaming nightmares clawing through bulkheads to feast on souls. Just the field doing its work, and somehow that work was not enough, because time had gotten inside anyway. Time, or something wearing time's face. Navigator Marsh had tried to explain it during what I think was the 3rd ship-wide briefing, though it might have been the 1st or the 7th. She stood on the command deck with her bandaged eye sockets. Navigators removed their eyes during the implantation process, replacing biological sight with something capable of perceiving the warp, and her voice carried through the Vox system to every compartment and corridor and hold. "We are caught in a temporal eddy," she said, "a fold in the Immaterium where cause and effect do not maintain their proper relationship. The ship is intact. The ship will remain intact. But the flow of time within different sections varies based on proximity to certain features of the fold. I am working to locate an exit point." Someone asked how long that would take. "Time is the problem," she replied. Asking how long is meaningless. Then she said something else, something I've thought about every day since. We are not late. We were never on time. We arrived at this moment before we departed, and we will depart before we arrive. Do not ask me to explain it in terms that make sense. It does not make sense. Sense is a luxury of real space. The briefing ended, or it continued, or it had not yet begun. I walked back to my station and found Chief Bosun Fenton waiting for me, and she had aged 15 years since I had seen her that morning, her hair now grey where it had been dark brown, her face lined with creases that had not existed hours before. She looked at me and said nothing about her transformation, because what was there to say? Deck 4 reports structural stress along the port hull, she told me. Take a team and assess. I took a team, we assessed. The stress was real, metal groaning under forces that seemed to come from nowhere, bulkheads bowing inward as if pressed by invisible hands. One of my team members, a rating named Douglas Perry, dropped dead halfway through the inspection. He simply stopped walking, stood still for a moment, and then collapsed. The chirurgeon who examined his body later said he had died of old age. He had been 19. That was when I started. Counting. Not hours. Hours meant nothing, but events. Things that happened in whatever order they happened. I kept a log writing down each significant occurrence with my own hand, because the cogitators had stopped keeping accurate records around the same time the chronometers diverged. The log filled up faster than it should have. Pages I had not yet written appeared with my handwriting on them, describing events I did not remember. Pages I had written vanished, and returned with additional notes in the margins, additions in my own hand that I had no memory of making. On what my personal log called Event 17, I found an entry that read, Ellis is not immune. Ellis is the lock. Find the key in the captain's cabin. Do not trust the father. I did not understand what that meant. I still do not understand what it means, but I circled it 3 times with my stylus, pressing hard enough to tear the paper, because something about those words felt important in a way I could not articulate. Ellis, the lock, the captain's cabin. Father Donovan Crane, the ship's confessor, who moved through the corridors administering last rites to men and women who had not yet died, but could feel death rushing toward them through the fractured time stream. The soldiers were dying fastest. Whatever force had invaded our ship seemed hungriest in the transport holds, where 14,000 men and women had entered stasis pods expecting to wake in the Immaterium refreshed and ready for war. The pods malfunctioned or functioned too well, or simply became irrelevant when time stopped operating by the rules they had been designed to obey. Soldiers emerged ancient, or did not emerge at all, or emerged as children with adult memories screaming behind their eyes. The regimental officers tried to maintain order for a while, but order requires sequence, requires before and after, requires the fundamental assumption that actions have consequences that follow rather than precede them. That assumption no longer held. Colonel Marcus Webb, commander of the regiment, came to see me in my quarters on Event 31. He was looking for Chief Bosun Fenton, he said, but he found me instead, and something about his expression suggested he had known he would find me, had perhaps always known, had perhaps been sent by a future version of himself to deliver a message to a past version of me. The men are losing faith, he said. He had aged a decade since I had seen him last, but his eyes remained sharp, remained focused. A career soldier, bred for adaptation. They pray to the God Emperor, but their prayers come back to them before they speak them. They hear themselves screaming in corridors they have not yet walked. Some of them have started finding their own bodies. Finding their own bodies? Dead versions, future versions, I assume. Corpses wearing their faces, killed by wounds they have not yet received. He sat on the edge of my bunk without asking permission. One of my sergeants shot himself an hour ago, or a week ago. I found him in the mess hall this morning, eating breakfast, with a hole in his head that had not yet been made. He did not know he was dead. He kept asking why everyone was staring. I had no answer for that. I had no answer for any of it. I told the colonel that Captain Briggs was coordinating with Navigator Marsh to find an exit point, that the Geller field remained intact, that all any of us could do was maintain our duties and trust in the Emperor's protection. The words felt hollow even as I spoke them. the empty reassurances of a man drowning who insists the water is not wet. I heard something from one of your ratings, Colonel Webb said. The one who does not age. Ellis. He told one of my sergeants that the ship knows where the exit is, that the ship has always known, that something is keeping us here deliberately. Ellis said that? My sergeant heard him say it. 3 days from now, apparently. He remembered the conversation before it happened. The colonel's voice remained steady, but his hands trembled slightly where they rested on his knees. I came to ask you what that means. Why would something want to keep us lost? I thought about my log entry. Ellis is not immune. Ellis is the lock. I do not know, I said, but I intend to find out. The colonel nodded. He stood. He walked to my hatch and paused there, looking back at me with those sharp old eyes in that newly aged face. Find out quickly, he said. Whatever time means here, we are running out of it. I can feel the ship changing, growing, like it is feeding on what is happening to us. Then he left, and I sat alone with my questions, and somewhere in the distance I heard the ship's chronometers chiming the hour, each one singing a different number, a chorus of disagreement that echoed through the corridors like prayer. I decided to find Ellis. This was easier said than done. The ratings aboard the Fervent Obligation numbered in the hundreds, and they moved through the ship in patterns that had once been predictable, dictated by watch schedules and duty assignments and the rigid hierarchy of naval service. Those patterns had dissolved along with linear time. I found ratings standing frozen in corridors, trapped in moments that seemed to have separated from the timeline entirely, their bodies still but their eyes tracking movement, aware of their paralysis but unable to break it. I found others moving backward, their actions reversing themselves, walking in retreat from destinations they had not yet reached toward origins they had already departed. I found empty compartments that should have been occupied and crowded compartments that should have been empty, and once, memorably, I found myself standing in a corridor I did not recognize, staring at a hatch marked with symbols I could not read, with no memory of how I had arrived there. The hatch opened. Father Donovan Crane stood on the other side. He was younger than I remembered. When we had departed Port Severance, the ship's confessor had been a man in his 50s, grey-bearded and heavy, his movements slow with the weight of years spent absorbing the sins of others. The man before me now could not have been older than 30. His beard was dark, his face unlined, his eyes bright with something that might have been faith or might have been fever. He smiled when he saw me. "Bosun's mate Talbot," he said, "I have been expecting you. I expect you still. I expected you yesterday. Time makes prophets of us all, does it not, Father?" I stepped back, an instinctive reaction to his sudden youth, to the wrongness of his transformation. Everyone else had aged. Why had he gone the other direction? "I am looking for rating Ellis. Ellis is not here." The confessor's smile did not waver. "Ellis is everywhere. Ellis is the fixed point around which the rest of us spin. Have you not noticed? He does not change because he cannot change. He was made that way, consecrated, if you will forgive a theological term for a mechanical process." "What do you mean, made?" Father Crane stepped out of the compartment, pulling the hatch closed behind him. I caught a glimpse of what lay beyond. Candles, hundreds of them, arranged in patterns that seemed to shift and writhe in the flickering light, and then the hatch sealed, and he stood before me in the corridor, his young face serene. "Do you know what a temporal anchor is?" he asked. "The Mechanicus uses them, in certain circumstances, a person treated with specific sacred technologies, their personal timeline locked in place, immune to fluctuations. They were developed for situations exactly like this one, vessels lost in temporal eddies, crews aging and de-aging without pattern. An anchor provides stability, a reference point. Ellis was chosen before we departed, prepared. His timeline cannot deviate because it has been fixed by the Omnissiah's arts. I absorbed this. It made a certain terrible sense. But if Ellis is an anchor, why have we not used him to find the exit, to stabilize the crew? Because anchors must be activated. Father Crane began walking down the corridor, and I found myself following, though I had not consciously decided to move. The ritual requires specific components, specific prayers, specific circumstances. We have had the components, we have had the prayers. The circumstances have eluded us. What circumstances? He stopped, turned. His smile was gone now, replaced by an expression I could not read. The captain must activate the anchor, only the captain. Captain Briggs must speak the words and perform the sacred gestures in his cabin, where the master chronometer still maintains true time. But Captain Briggs has not been seen for events uncounted. Some say he is dead, some say he never existed, some say he is waiting in his cabin for someone to find him, locked in a moment that refuses to advance. Then we find him. Finding is not the problem. Father Crane resumed walking. Reaching is the problem. The captain's cabin exists in multiple temporal states simultaneously. Those who enter do not return, or return before they enter, or return as something other than they were. I have seen 3 crewmen attempt it. I watched one grow old and die before he crossed the threshold. I watched another scream in a language that has not been spoken in 10,000 years. I watched the third simply cease to exist, erased from the timeline entirely, forgotten by everyone except me. I remember because remembering is my function. Confessors bear witness. That is our purpose. We had reached a junction in the corridor, 6 passages branching outward in directions that seemed to shift when I was not looking directly at them. Father Crane stopped again. "You want to find Ellis?" he said. "Ellis is in Cargo Bay 7. He has been there for a very long time, or a very short time, or no time at all. He is waiting for someone brave enough or desperate enough to attempt what no one else has succeeded in doing. He knows the way to the captain's cabin. He has always known. He was designed to know. Why have you not told anyone this before?" Father Crane's smile returned, and this time I recognized the fever in his eyes for what it was. Not faith, not madness, something older and colder, something that had worn his face like a mask. "Because I am not supposed to be here either," he said. "I died at Port Severance, bosun's mate Talbot. An accident in the loading process. A cargo container fell. I was crushed. I remember the weight. I remember the pain. I remember the moment when everything ended. And then I woke here, aboard this ship, younger than I have been in decades, with memories of a journey I never took." He gestured down one of the branching corridors. "Cargo Bay 7. Find Ellis, find the captain, activate the anchor, exit this nightmare. Or stay here with me in this eternal recursion, confessing sins that have not yet been committed to a priest who is already dead." Then he walked away down a different corridor, and I stood alone at the junction, and the chronometer on the wall showed a time that was also a date that was also a word I could not read, and I thought, do not trust the Father. But he had told me where to find Ellis, and that was more than I had known before. I went to Cargo Bay 7. The cargo bays occupied the lower decks of the Fervent Obligation, vast chambers designed to hold the endless material demands of Imperial warfare, ammunition, rations, replacement equipment, sacred relics, propaganda materials, the 1,000 necessities that kept armies functioning in hostile territory. Most of the bays were sealed now, their contents either essential to crew survival or too dangerous to access in the ship's current condition. Bay 7 had been designated for non-essential cargo when we departed, filled with crates of administrative supplies and personal effects belonging to officers of the Guard Regiment. I had not thought about it since translation began. The hatch was open when I arrived. Not unlocked, open deliberately, the seal broken from inside. I stepped through and found myself in a space that had changed since I had last seen it. The crates were gone. In their place stood a forest of chronometers, thousands of them, every size, every design, from personal timepieces to industrial clock faces to cogitator displays showing scrolling numbers. They hung from the ceiling on chains. They rested on pedestals scattered across the floor. They projected from the walls at angles that defied normal installation. And every single one showed a different time, a different date, a different measurement of passage that contradicted every other measurement around it. Ellis sat in the center of this mechanical forest, cross-legged on the deck, his young, unchanged face peaceful. "You found the entry in your log," he said. "I wondered when you would." I picked my way through the hanging chronometers, careful not to touch them, feeling their discordant ticking vibrating through the deck plates beneath my boots. You wrote it, that entry. Somehow you wrote in my log before the events it described. I did not write anything. Ellis did not stand, did not move, simply watched me approach with eyes that held no fear and no urgency. You wrote it, a version of you that exists further along the recursion than you currently occupy. You wrote it and I delivered it, placed it in your log at the appropriate moment, ensured that you would find it when you needed to find it. This is my function. I connect moments. I bridge the gaps that should not exist but do. Father Crane said you are a temporal anchor, that you were modified before we departed. Father Crane says many things. Some of them are true, some of them were true, some of them will be true, but are not yet. Ellis finally moved, rising to his feet in one smooth motion. Despite his unchanged appearance, there was something old about his movements, something careful and practiced, as if he had performed this exact sequence of actions many times before. I am an anchor, yes. I was made this way. My timeline does not deviate because deviation has been removed from me. But that does not mean I understand what is happening to this ship, or why, or how to stop it. Can you lead me to the captain's cabin? I can show you the path. Whether you can walk it is a different question. He began moving through the chronometer forest, weaving between the hanging timepieces with the ease of long familiarity. I followed, watching the times displayed on each face as I passed, some showing dates from before my birth, some showing dates that had not yet occurred, some showing what appeared to be coordinates, or equations, or symbols that meant nothing to me. How long have you been here? I asked. In this bay? That question does not mean what you think it means. Ellis did not look back. I have been here for the entire journey. I have been here for no time at all. I arrived before the ship departed Port Severance, and I will leave after it has ceased to exist. Time is a river, boatswain's mate Talbot, and most people float along with the current. I am a stone at the bottom. The water flows around me, but I do not move. We reached the far wall of the bay, where a hatch I did not remember should not have been. It looked older than the ship itself, its metal corroded and pitted, covered in inscriptions that seemed to writhe when I tried to focus on them. Beyond this hatch is the path to the captain's cabin, Ellis said. It passes through parts of the ship that do not technically exist, spaces that the fold has created, temporary structures built from the substance of compressed time. You will see things that have happened and things that have not happened and things that cannot happen under any normal circumstances. Do not stop. Do not interact. Do not try to change what you observe. Observation is safe. Participation is fatal. Come with me. I cannot. For the first time, something like emotion crossed Ellis's unchanging face. Regret, perhaps, or simply resignation. My function is to guide, not to accompany. I must remain here, maintaining the connection between this moment and the moment you will arrive at the captain's cabin. If I move, the path closes. You will be lost in the spaces between moments, and no one will ever find you. Then how will I know where to go? Ellis reached out and took my hand. His touch was cold, colder than any living flesh should be, and where our skin met I felt a sensation like pages turning, like the flip of chronometer hands, like time itself rearranging around the point of contact. Now you know, he said. The path is in you. Follow it. He released me. The hatch opened without my touching it, revealing darkness beyond. I stepped through. The space beyond the hatch was not part of the fervent obligation. I knew this immediately, instinctively, the way you know when you are dreaming even while the dream persists. The corridor I found myself in was made of something that looked like metal but felt like bone, smooth and slightly warm, pulsing faintly with a rhythm that matched no heartbeat I had ever felt. The walls curved upward into darkness, and from that darkness came the ticking of chronometers I could not see, millions of them, their discordant rhythms combining into a sound that was almost music. I walked. There was nothing else to do. As I walked, I saw them. The things Ellis had warned me about, events happening in the walls around me, scenes playing out in pockets of frozen time that opened like wounds in the bone-metal corridor. I saw the fervent obligation in dock at Port Severance. loading crew and cargo, myself among them, younger, unaware of what waited in the Immaterium. I saw the same dock burning, ships destroyed, bodies scattered across landing platforms, though whether this was past or future I could not say. I saw Captain Briggs standing on his command deck, giving orders I could not hear. And then I saw him screaming, clawing at his face, tearing his own eyes from their sockets, while officers stood frozen around him. "Do not interact," Ellis had said. "Observation is safe." I kept walking. I saw Colonel Webb leading his regiment into battle on a world I did not recognize, lass fire painting the air crimson, soldiers dying by the hundreds, as something vast and terrible descended from the sky. I saw Father Crane as an old man, kneeling in a chapel, speaking prayers in a language that had no words. I saw Navigator Marsh removing her bandages, revealing not empty sockets but eyes, human eyes, terrified eyes, that should not have been there. I saw Chief Bosun Fenton holding a child that might have been hers, or mine, or someone else's entirely. A child that existed in no timeline I could access. I saw myself, multiple versions, walking different corridors, speaking to different people, dying in different ways. I saw myself age and wither. I saw myself grow young. I saw myself step through a hatch and never emerge, or emerge before I entered, or emerge screaming in a language that had not been spoken in 10,000 years. Do not interact. I kept walking. The corridor branched and twisted and folded back on itself, but the path Ellis had burned into my mind remained clear, a thread of certainty through the chaos. I followed it without thinking, without allowing myself to think, because thought meant engagement, and engagement meant interaction, and interaction meant death. Until I reached the door. It was not the hatch to a captain's cabin. It was a door made of wood, actual wood, organic material that had no place aboard a voidship, ancient and carved with symbols that resembled the inscriptions on the hatch to Ellis's cargo bay. It stood in the center of the corridor, unsupported, freestanding, and from beyond it came a ticking that was different from the rest. A single chronometer, one unified. Time. I opened the door. Captain Luther Briggs sat behind his desk, in his cabin, exactly as he would have sat in real space, in a properly functioning ship, in a universe where time obeyed its own laws. He was writing something, his stylus moving across parchment, his face illuminated by illuminator that cast steady, unwavering light. Above his desk, the master chronometer showed a time and date that matched no reference I had available, but the hands moved in proper sequence, second following second, minute following minute, a rhythm of normalcy in the heart of impossibility. He looked up as I entered. He did not seem surprised. "Bosun's mate Talbot," he said, "you are the 7th to reach me, or the 1st, the distinction has stopped mattering." I stood in the doorway, unwilling to step fully into this pocket of stability, half convinced it would collapse the moment I trusted it. "Captain, the ship is lost, the crew is dying. Ellis, rating Ellis, told me you could activate the temporal anchor, stabilize the timeline, find us a way out." "Ellis." The captain's lips thinned. "Ellis is the reason we are here." I stared at him. What? Not intentionally, not through any fault of his own. Captain Briggs set down his stylus, leaning back in his chair. His face was haggard, older than I remembered, but his eyes remained sharp. The temporal anchor technology was meant to stabilize our journey through the fold. Instead, it attracted the fold to us. The Immaterium sensed the fixed point of his timeline and wrapped itself around it like a predator attracted to motion. We did not drift into this nightmare, Bosun's mate. The nightmare came to find us, and it will not let us go until it has consumed everything Ellis's anchor connects to. Then deactivate him, remove the anchor. It cannot be removed, not without killing him, and killing him will not save us. It will simply collapse the remaining temporal structure, destroying the ship instantly. The captain stood, moving around his desk to stand before the master chronometer. Its ticking filled the cabin, steady and relentless. There is one option, one path that might lead to survival. But it requires sacrifice. It requires someone to take Ellis's place. The words hung in the air. I understood them. I did not want to understand them. The anchor is a function, not a person, Captain Briggs continued. It can be transferred if someone willingly accepts the modification, allows their timeline to be locked in place as Ellis's was locked. The fold's attention will shift. The new anchor will become the fixed point, and the old anchor will be released, able to change, to age, to help navigate us toward an exit. And the person who becomes the new anchor will remain frozen forever, their timeline locked, unable to deviate, unable to change, unable to escape the fold even if the ship does. They will become part of this place, a permanent feature of the eternal recursion. I thought about the soldiers in the transport holds, aging and dying and finding their own corpses in corridors they had not yet walked. I thought about Chief Bosun Fenton's grey hair, and the ratings frozen in moments that refused to advance, and Father Crane's young face, and old eyes and confession of a death that had already claimed him. I thought about my log, with its entries I had not written, its predictions of events that had not occurred, the message that had led me here. Ellis is not immune. Ellis is the lock. Find the key in the captain's cabin. The key. Show me, I said. Captain Briggs turned to face me. You understand what you are offering? I understand that someone has to do it. I understand that I am here now, at this moment, because some version of me already made this choice and sent me the instructions that led me to make it again. I understand that time is a loop, and the only way out of a loop is to close it. The captain nodded. He reached into his desk and withdrew a device I did not recognize, a cylinder of dark metal, covered in the same writhing inscriptions I had seen throughout this journey, with a needle at one end that gleamed in the steady light. The modification is immediate. One injection. Your timeline will lock. Ellis will be freed. Navigator Marsh will have the stability she needs to find an exit. The ship will escape, and I will not. You will remain, here in this cabin, where the master chronometer maintains true time. You will exist forever in this moment, unchanging, unfading, part of the fold, part of the nightmare, but alive, in whatever sense that word still means anything. I looked at the device in his hand. I looked at the chronometer on the wall, its hands moving in proper sequence, the only true time left in the universe. I thought about Warren Talbot, 31 years old when this journey began, 17 years of service, acceptable performance reviews, a life measured in watches stood and duties performed. None of that mattered now. Nothing mattered except ending this. One condition, I said. Tell the crew what happened. Tell them who saved them. Not for glory, for the record. So someone knows. So it means something. Captain Briggs inclined his head. I will tell them. I held out my arm. He pressed the needle against my skin. The injection burned like nothing I had ever felt. Ice and fire and something beyond either. A sensation of my entire existence being pinned in place like an insect on a collector's board. I felt time flowing around me, flowing through me, and then suddenly I felt nothing at all. No flow, no passage, no before and no after. Just now, just this moment, just the steady ticking of the master chronometer marking seconds that would never accumulate into anything larger. Captain Briggs stepped back. He was already fading, or I was fading, or the cabin was expanding into something vaster than its physical dimensions should have allowed. Thank you, bosun's mate Talbot, he said. The Imperium will not remember you. History will not record your name. But for what it is worth, I will remember. For as long as I live, I will remember the man who chose to stay behind so others could escape. Then he was gone, and I was alone. The chronometer ticked, second after second after second. I counted them at first, 100, 1,000, 10,000, but eventually the counting stopped mattering. Time passed without me, or I passed without time, or the distinction ceased to exist. I am still here. I will always be here. The fold has me now, and it will never let go. And somewhere in the distance I hear the sound of engines and the chatter of crew, and the voice of Navigator Marsh announcing real space emergence in 17 minutes, and I know that they escaped, that my sacrifice meant something, that the Warren Talbot who existed before this moment bought, 14,000 soldiers, and a full ship's crew their lives with his own eternity. The chronometer ticks, the cabin waits, the fold breathes around me. This is my function now. I connect moments, I bridge the gaps. I am the fixed point around which the rest of existence spins, and somewhere, in a cargo bay filled with 1,000 stolen timepieces, a young man named Ellis wakes up for the first time in centuries. He is 24 years old again. He will not remember me. That is acceptable. That is the cost. The chronometer ticks on.